If you're tired of the standard business and marketing fundamentals, frameworks, and funnels, you need a little mischief. Get ready to turn up the volume on the CEO Mischief Maker podcast, where you access conversations with seasoned business owners who have smashed through mindset barriers, innovated the standard boring business and marketing playbooks, and executed future-paced strategies with bleeding-edge tools and tactics to micro-fail their way into massive success and growth. We are Mindset Impact Strategic Catalysts helping innovative entrepreneurs focus. We are CEO Mischief Makers. Ready to make a little mischief? Hey, CEO Mischief Makers, welcome to the conversation. I get to introduce you to a unique conversation with an incredible human that I've met recently, Michael Sheridan. Michael, welcome to the conversation. How you doing?
Thank you for having me, MK.
Yeah, so let's dive in and just start from the beginning, right? Or at least this beginning. I don't want to go all the way back to birth, right? But start me off with just kind of explain to people what you do.
So I help people heal childhood trauma, but it's not usually what I say to people. That's what I do. I say I help spiritual seekers who are struggling to discover their gifts and life purpose. And I help them to put them in touch with the life they intended to live. And I do that by interpreting their dreams and telling them what their dreams are saying they're meant to be doing. But behind the scenes, I help people heal childhood trauma.
Because that's pretty much where it all comes from, right?
Well, that's a lot of people that they have. That's part of the purpose of being here, is to heal an issue that's holding them back. And your dreams tie all of like why you have the issue, why it holds you back, and what you need to do about it, and how it's going to be beneficial for you ultimately in the long run to have had that issue.
So I've got to go back to when I first met you, and we were both in a mastermind together. And one of the conversations from the leader of the mastermind, Mike Kim, he was talking about, hey, I'm not really a woo-woo kind of guy, and that kind of stuff. And then he's kind of morphed that into saying I'm woo adjacent, right? And I think he's even getting a little woo parallel. Right. I think he's starting on that path. But with that, you pretty much introduced yourself as saying, hey, I was nowhere woo. Woo was not in my life at all. I was denying any woo existed.
Totally. Not just denying it. Yeah, not just denying it. If somebody was woo at all in the room, I would absolutely mock them. And if they decided to go to another room to avoid me, I would follow them and keep mocking them and pointing at them. Saying idiot over here. So it's really interesting that was how I was. And now I'm completely on the other side of it. But because I was such a skeptic and cruel to people in the field, I have amazing tolerance for people who are skeptics and put the whole field down and things like that, because I was totally there.
You understand the difference. Mm-hmm. So what was, this first part of this conversation is all about mindset. So that was a very, very specific mindset, not just to, not like woo-woo, but to actually mock people. And yes. I'm sure, called them every name, charlatans and all the, they're just faking it and all these things. And to switch that mindset to what you do now, what in the world? How could that complete 180?
I didn't outwardly call them charlatans, but I definitely knew they were charlatans. So what happened, I was doing a meditation practice. I managed a team of software engineers. I'm a software engineer myself originally. And so I was managing a team of 19 people, and I decided I would do this meditation technique called the Silva Mind Control Method. And I was going to use it to help me be more focused, more laser focused in what I needed to do and the problems I needed to solve. I enjoy challenges, and I enjoy making systems do like things at the very edge of what they're capable of doing. And so I learned this process, paid for it, and went and learned it. And I was meditating for about 3 hours a day. It worked well because I I used to get the bus into work and back in Dublin, big city, and it just crawled. You could walk faster. And so I would, depending on how long the bus take, it might take an hour, might take an hour and a half in both directions. And I would just meditate the whole time. And it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. It was great use of that time. That was just totally downtime otherwise. I was also doing karate at the same time, a traditional style with low horse stances and all that stuff. So I didn't know it at the time. So basically doing grounding exercises, working on my base chakra, and then meditation exercises. And after a long time of doing that, I suddenly started seeing spirits. Now, I was an atheist. I didn't expect that. I didn't believe spirits existed. But the irony was, as it turned out, the spirit world didn't need me to believe in it for it to exist. So suddenly I started seeing spirits. I couldn't switch it off. I didn't know why it was happening. That took a while to figure out. And so I was still meditating and doing the very things that switched it on to me. And so it wasn't a pleasant experience. It really freaked me out. It ended my atheism pretty quickly. I mean, there was two options. Either I was mad and hallucinating what I was seeing, or it was real. But, it's very obvious when something's real. Maybe anybody who's mad would say that too. But it wasn't something I wanted. Because I had never read any books about this field, because I already knew it was a bogus field. I'd no frame of reference. And so what I ended up having to do was go to the charlatans to try to find answers to what was happening and how can I solve this? And it was almost like cloak and dagger. I remember the very first reading I went for, I was like, I don't want anybody to see me going into this place. It's where I was going into a brothel or something. And it was, and the guy's really good, and he's a friend to this day. This is like 35 years ago. He straight off said, "Oh, your father's already here. He looks exactly like you." And he did look exactly like me, and he told me things about my dad that I didn't know. And I thought I was 14 when my dad died. So I thought I knew everything. But he told me a habit that he had where he would rub his knees because he had arthritis or something, or rheumatism. And I don't ever remember my dad doing that. So I was like, okay, well, that's not right. But I went home and I checked it. And sure enough, he did used to do that. And so it opened my mind, slowly opened my mind. Well, obviously, seeing spirits opened my mind to the fact that the spirit world was real. But then having to eat humble pie and basically go around anybody who would listen to me, and I didn't deserve it, but asking anybody who would listen to me, like, what's going on and how do I stop this from happening? And I did eventually find people that were able to explain it and what I needed to do. Because, like I said, it wasn't a pleasant experience. It was painful in some ways, physically painful. But it then set me on a journey of, well, what is life really about? So if the spirit world is real and I'm looking at it, then why are we here? What is life about? And there must be a purpose. And so I went on this journey to find my purpose. And I thought, this is going to be great, because now the spirit world knows I'm awake, let's say. It's going to say, hey, Michael, here's your thing. All I just need to do is find the burning bush. And, we all know that they're put in your path. But that wasn't what happened. I did course after course after course, anything I could afford. I bought loads of books. This is pre-internet, way, way pre-internet. It's also pre the new age explosion, you could say. So there was very few books in this field. So I was buying anything that would come out and reading it. And there was a lot of good books and a lot of good courses, and they clicked things into place for me, but nothing ever put the last gear into place until I did dream interpretation. Because what was interesting was you'd meet people and they'd say, this is the answer. And then you meet somebody else like, this is the answer. It's like how many stores in Seattle all say Seattle has coffee. It's one of those things, and they can't all be right. And but with dreams, I discovered that they are all right. Everybody has a different path, and their path is unique to them, and other people will also go that particular path. But your dreams will show you what the circumstances are for you and what it is you're meant to be doing. And so what's right for you could be wrong for somebody else. And that's perfectly fine. but they're both correct paths. And that was absolutely fantastic. But the main thing was my dreams described me to a T. When the very first class I ever did, first good class, the analysis, it just blew me away because it described me so well. And it was warts and all. I mean, I had lots of failings, as you can imagine, by the fact that I was willing to follow somebody to another room. And it described that part of me. It said where it came from and what I needed to do to heal it. And at the very last thing that the person had said in the first analysis I got, she said, oh, yeah, by the way, this dreamer was born by cesarean section. And it was all done anonymously. So nobody knew it was my dream. I don't know how they didn't, because my mouth was wide open. You could have driven a train in. And this is like born by cesarean section back in 65. This is before doctors just scheduled it because it would interfere with their golf practice that day.
Yeah.
It was only done in emergencies, and it was dangerous, So the fact that she could just pull that out, as well as all the other things. And so because I'd been on this long journey of trying to find out what are the answers, I just threw myself into that. So that's my mind shift journey in a nutshell. But it was still a case of constantly having to bump up against the wall of your mind is closed here. You need to open up. You need to open up. You need to open up. And that still happens to this day. Oh, unfortunately.
Yeah. I really, no, I don't, I hear you about the unfortunately, but it really is true. I pretty much feel until my last breath, I will be shifting my mindset and growing and discovering deeper and deeper and deeper. I don't think that's a practice that stops. At least for me, it's not going to stop. But so take me back. That first off, I need to acknowledge that incredible story. And even though you went through it as if it was a matter of fact, and I just saw spirits, and then I went into this, and I'm sure that if you actually spent time talking to us about the actual experience, it would not have been matter of fact.
No, the people in the next houses, they knew I saw spirits by the screaming. I'm joking. They probably didn't, but yeah, I screamed the place down. It was not a, whoa, this is interesting. It wasn't one of those experiences.
No, it was like, get me out of here. Something's wrong. Yeah. I need to leave. Yeah. But so with that though, from that particular point, and you said that was 35 years ago. So you were, I would assume probably in your 20s or something around there. Yeah. And so when you look at that time frame, how long did it take you I'm not going to ask you how many mindset shifts, because there were just countless numbers, but you finally got to this point where you understood, where you at least knew the path you needed to be on, and you felt very solid and comfortable in that path and the purpose of that path. How long did that take?
About a year and a half. So, which is pretty quick. So from seeing spirits to, maybe a year and a half to 2 years at most. And once I did the dream course, like on the second or third class, my mentor, George Radican, he interpreted one of my dreams, and he said, you're meant to be doing what I'm doing. And I said, oh, you tell everybody that, because I had met somebody else who was teaching dream classes and was terrible. And he said that this guy had told him, that George had told him he was meant to be doing it. And he looked puzzled. He was like, why would you say that? So it wasn't the second class. It was the second course I did with him. And so I said about this other guy, won't give his name away. And he said, oh yeah, I never told him. He shouldn't be doing it. And I said, well, what about that woman who interpreted my dream in the first class? And he goes, yeah, she's the other person. He said, I've only ever told two people, and I've been doing this for 30 years, you and her. And so what was really interesting is the first class I ended up in, I had the world's best dream analyst and his best student not at student level, like a genius in her own right. And they are the people that I sat through classes with. And it was just absolutely amazing. And so I just soaked it all in. And then when I said, okay, I'm going to do this, he persuaded me to do a joint venture, and we created a company called Ashling Dream Interpretation, which is still the name I do it under now. And because I had picked that name, I got contacted by the TV studio we booked an event, We were going to talk at an event. And so I ended up on TV within, 2 weeks. It was like a whirlwind journey. If you'd have asked me to spell my name while I was in the studio, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But I still did it. I don't know how, but it started just a long journey of coincidences, of doors just being opened for me. And I ended up with a spot on TV. Every 6 weeks I was on TV, and twice a week I was on radio. And it was absolutely, I didn't need to do anything. I didn't need to market or advertise or anything. If I ran a class, they were full. And I didn't appreciate my look at the time. But so it was quick. I still worked in the software engineering field, and I did that for a long time. I was in college. I'm studying psychology and information technology, cognitive psychology mostly. And I said to myself, okay, if by the end of this I'm still smitten with dreams, then I will pursue that path rather than going further and further down the academic route and learning more and more about computers and programming and so on. But I kind of did both, but my heart was in the space of dream interpretation and helping people heal, because your dreams are going to show you what your purpose is, why you're here, and what you need to do to become a better person, to become the best version of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I hear you. I've gone through a lot of those kinds of realizations. And I've gotten to a point where if I have a dream, I used to have dreams that were very victim. I was the victim. Right. Someone was coming in. I was going to be beaten, or someone was going to kidnap me, or my kids, or something like that.
Yeah,
that was where my fears were. And I've gotten to a point where I've prepared myself before I go to bed that if I'm going to have one of those dreams, here are your kung fu techniques that you're going to use.
And that works. And that's perfect.
Yeah. And so here are the ways. Yep.
Yeah, I said it took 2 years. Like from start to finish. It took 2 years to find out my path and start on my path. But then the path itself, there was a whole series of mindset shifts. I was still my income from working in the software engineering field. And about 7 years ago, I decided I was going to switch and work from doing dreams, about 8 years ago. And that was a whole journey on its own that required a whole lot of other shifts. Yeah. Particularly, I had to learn how to value myself and stand in front of people and say, here's what I can do. Not just here's what I can do, but here's what the cost is. Yeah. And I'm worth this. That was a big one for me. You can be fantastic at something, but you're no good at marketing or selling. And it doesn't matter then. The world doesn't even know you exist.
Yeah, definitely. And that is a mindset shift we all have to take. And because there are lots of people who are great salespeople and they just can sell anything. That does not mean that they value the worth. And that's a very different place to be in. So that's what I was going to say. I knew there was a time frame between when you discovered this and now, and that 35 years, you haven't been doing this full time as your calling to the world exclusively for very long. I knew that. So
I've been doing it exclusively for 8 years, but all the time through, I was on TV and radio, and I always ran classes. I made a commitment that I would always do that. And if I ever got a call from a radio show, I would show up and I would do the interviews and so on. So I've been on easily 1,000 different radio shows, BBC, you name it, shared the stage with very famous people and all sorts of stuff. It was great. It's really good being on, especially TV shows and who you meet in the green room. You really meet some of your idols. So I've been very active. I wrote a book. So even while I was working at software engineering, I wrote a book in 2007. And so it was still really, and that took 9 months. And I actually took a sabbatical from work to write that book. So I thought it was going to take three months, because I was going to put together all the stuff I had written in newsletters over the years on my blog. But if you're going to put something in book form, it really takes a lot more thought and research to make sure everything you have on the page is correct. I don't think everybody does that, but I did. So it took 9 months. So even though it was a sideline, it was only a sideline in the sense that I couldn't have lived off it, but it was still my passion.
Yeah. But there's a big mindset shift right there that yes, you can live off of it. You can live off of your passion. You can have this passion and the impact you're having on the world. I mean, when people heal their childhood trauma, when they go back to that child and heal that child in their body, in their psyche, in their heart, it has a massive shift on their life, and it frees them to be able to let that go and move forward and be, not even just move forward. We're just talking, just be in the present without that child determining how they look at everything. I mean, that is a major impact on the world.
It is. People have traits that they're really defensive traits, but they don't know they're defensive traits. And they think these traits are their issues. Like, I don't share my feelings, or I keep people at a distance, or I'm angry all the time, or whatever. And they don't understand where it comes from, why they do it. But they ultimately are doing it to protect themselves from re-experiencing a trauma that they experienced before. Now, not everybody fits this mold, but most people fit this mold. So when I'm working with somebody, I'm really lucky because one of the things I do is I put on courses that are expensive, and I life purpose is, and what your gifts are, what your spiritual gifts are. Like, are you a writer? Are you a channel? Are you a healer? What is it? Your dreams will show it. And people want to know that. And from looking at the dreams, I can also tell then what issues they have. And then I'll explain those issues. And much like the way it was done to me, it just drops your jaw on the floor, and you're like, okay, what do I do about this? And then I've got the set of tools for doing something about it. But it's very fulfilling work. You write a good software program and you release a package into the world. First of all, it sucks every hour out of your life. When you come up to project deadlines, everybody's working the weekend, all sorts of stuff. It doesn't have the same fulfilling thing as it does being a person to overcome a major obstacle that they thought they could never overcome. And like I said, most people try to work on removing the defensive mechanisms that they have, the defensive traits, and that's not how you do it. You don't even go for those. You go for the trauma, heal the trauma, and then the traits disappear.
Okay, hold on. If your mindset was shifted, you were inspired to innovate, and you were spurred into action, don't just move on with your day. Focus, my friend, and take a few minutes to visit CEOmischiefmaker.com to learn more about the value that was shared with you today. Please act now and create some CEO mischief of your own.